The Queen's Betrayal. The royal court of the kingdom of Nyamiri buzzes with life. Music fills the air as servants bustle around the throne room, where King Odum, an older wise ruler with a distinguished gray beard, sits beside his stunning young queen, Nyala. He was taken by her looks the moment he saw her. The king had suddenly lost his wife, the previous queen of many years, and had lived in grief for so many months. This was barely living, but he was still alive. For the first time in many months, his heaviness lifted, and it was because of Nyala's beauty. Her looks were legendary. Nyala was not a royal, but coming from a lower class, there is no way she would have ever rejected the pursuits of the king. But mostly she cherished the royal position, the attention she was getting, and the best part of all were the clothes, the outfits, the jewels, and the riches, and she had her own servants. And the power. She loved the power. She just told people what to do, and they did it. She enjoyed those things far more than she enjoyed the king himself. Still, her piercing eyes try to hide her restless spirit. Some could see it, but the king, who adores her, doesn't see it. He looks proudly on her. A trophy queen, his trophy queen. She had to be half his age. That's not how she saw it. She saw him as twice her age. Isn't that the same thing? Not to Nyala. It's a point of pride for King Odum to have a young wife, but for a young wife to have an old husband is not something she can easily look over. After all, the pomp and pageantry of the position had started to fade. She was shocked that King Odum's virility had faded long ago, and she was quite dissatisfied with him. She pondered to herself, why does he even need a wife at all? And why did he choose me? He's really old. The more he didn't satisfy her, the older she saw him. When he looks at her, she smiles, but as he turns his head, her fake smile turns cold. For months now, Nyala has been stealing away under the cover of night to meet Dayo, a strikingly handsome commoner who is also the captain of the king's guards. Dayo is her secret lover. The young queen moved on him quickly. Their passionate affair began the night after, the first day she saw him. One particular night, Nyala, who had left King Odum in the palace, snoring like thunder, again. She went out to meet Dayo, and she whispered some very dangerous words to him. Dayo, I cannot bear another day with that old man. I was meant for you, not him. If only he were gone, we could rule together. Gone? He barely gets that word out. Nyala gives him a look that says, you know what I mean. Dayo hesitates. Does he dare dream of himself as royalty, seated on King Odum's throne? How could he, especially with the guilt of knowing he had anything to do with the demise of his beloved king? Dayo loves her, but knows the consequences of treason. Still, her seductive voice pulls him closer to the edge of reason, closer to the edge of treason. He is enticed to think of leaving the life of a commoner and of a servant to the king, to actually have servants himself. Not only that, he and Nyala wouldn't have to sneak around at night anymore. Nyala has confidence in knowing how persuasive she can be, so she devises a plan. The next night, instead of meeting Dayo, Nyala disguises herself and covers her face with a dark hood and treks to the edge of town near the dark forest. She should have been afraid, but the evil plan within her surpassed any fear. She sneaks away from the palace to see a very old herbalist known as Mama Okoro, a mysterious woman feared for her knowledge of deadly potions. People say they go there for healing, but everyone really knows why people go to Mama Okoro, and it has nothing to do with healing, health, or life. Like ever. She walks in without even looking around to see who else may be there, who may see her and recognize her, or to overhear her diabolical plot. Nyala recklessly blurts out, I need something that will end his life quickly, but leave no trace, Nyala demands, tossing a large pouch of gold onto the herbalist's table. The bag burst open, and what spilled out looked like too much money, but how much money is a life worth? Mama Okoro eyes her suspiciously, seemingly looking right through Nyala. This woman was too comfortable making this transaction. Has she done this before? The herbalist wondered. Then she spoke with a shaky, raspy voice that was more like a loud, dark whisper. You play a dangerous game, my queen. Death comes for all, but summoning it invites curses. Mama Okoro makes up the potion and waits until midnight and speaks some abracadabra type words over it, and then gives it to Nyala. She prepares the lethal potion without hesitation because Mama Okoro has no loyalty to the king. Her loyalty is to that money, that gold, that bag, unshaken because she knows what she wants. And she always gets what she wants. Nyala picks up the poison vial and secures it in a small black drawstring bag. She sneaks back into the palace just before dawn, when the servants would be waking up, so no one saw her, not even Dio or the soldiers outside. She had long learned that they fall asleep an hour or so after midnight. All of them, even though they're not supposed to. She sneaks back into her bedchambers with this poison vial of death, not even sleepy for having been up all night and walking through the streets of the town all the way to the dark forest. She hides it securely from all the prying eyes within her chambers, never thinking twice about how Mama Okoro knew she was the queen. After all, not only was Nyala in disguise, but Mama Okoro didn't even look like she could see. Nyala, who seems to have lost her soul, gave less of a thought to the fact that she was using the king's money to buy a poison to kill him. Despite his age, King Odum is no fool. Over some weeks he has noticed Nyala's growing coldness and hears whispers of her late-night disappearances. He tried to stay awake to watch her several times, but he always fell asleep. She could hear him snoring through the wall that separated their two sleeping chambers. When the snoring storm started, she knew he was in a deep sleep, and she could leave and then return to the palace without him ever knowing that she had left. Handsome, but lust-filled, Dio, the captain of the king's guard, was approached by the king outside the palace one day. When asked, Dio said to the king that he hadn't seen anything unusual on the palace grounds at night. Dio didn't lie. Seeing Nyala at night outside of the palace and meeting up with her was not unusual, not since the first time they had seen each other. So, technically, Dio didn't lie. But did he? Did his words lead the king to believe that perhaps Nyala really was sleeping where she was supposed to be sleeping at night? Still, the king had nagging suspicions, so to test her loyalty, he arranges a feast in her honor, pretending to be unaware of her possible betrayal. His plan was to bring everyone that she may have anything to do with into the same room, and then carefully observe her as she interacts with the guests at the banquet. Surely, there will be clues. As the guests gather, Nyala nervously instructs Dio to ensure that the king drinks from a poisoned goblet. She had given the poison vial from Mama Okoro to one of her servants and told her it was for the king's manhood and that no one should know. Not even the king, because he would object to taking it. She convinced the servant that she wanted to get pregnant to produce an heir for the throne, and that this would be so good for the kingdom. The servant believes every one of Nyala's convincing lies. After all this was over, Nyala planned to fire that palace servant, so she'd never be able to speak a word of this to anyone. If that didn't work, she'd be willing to get rid of her permanently, so the servant would never be heard from again. The plan seems perfect, until the king unexpectedly offers a toast, raising his cup, and then in a seemingly romantic move, offering his own goblet to Nyala to drink first. Akela's hand trembles as she holds the goblet. All eyes are on her. She casts a quick eye over to the servant who had added the manhood drops into the goblet. Dio, standing in the corner, clutches the hilt of his sword, ready to act if something goes wrong. The queen's mind races. If she refuses, she will expose her guilt. If she drinks, she risks her own death. Oh, I'm too young to die, she thinks to herself. To my queen's beauty. And then he adds, and to my queen's health. The king says, his voice steady, but now his eyes are cold. Just as Nyala raises the goblet to her lips, a messenger bursts into the room, shouting, "The palace is under attack! Bandits have breached the walls!" Nyala fakes astonishment and drops the poisoned goblet to the floor and watches all the poisoned wine spill out. She is relieved. She has escaped death. At that same moment, Mama Okoro's words pierced her mind sharply like lightning. You play a dangerous game, my queen. Death comes for all, but summoning it invites curses. In the chaos that ensues, Nyala sees an opportunity. In this skirmish, as soon as Dio can break away from the fighting, they can flee the palace, taking the king's wealth with them. But King Odum, despite his age, with a stunning effort and Dio by his side, leads his guards to fight off the intruders. When the dust settles, the bandits are defeated and taken to the palace dungeon. Nyala has loaded large sacks of jewels and gold and silver, and has called for Dio to help her carry them away from the palace. They are caught by Dio's lieutenant, just at the palace gate. It appears that they are trying to escape with the valuables. King Odum confronts them, his voice filled with sorrow and anger. Dio, what's going on here? Nyala, I gave you everything. Love, power, loyalty. And this is how you repay me? Nyala, desperate, lunges at the king with a weapon, but Dio steps in, grabbing her arm. Enough, Nyala! He shouts. The king's head snaps around to Dio. Did you just address the queen by her first name? Dio's head hung down. It was then that the king knew for sure that the queen had become too familiar with Dio, and he had become too familiar with the king's young bride. It looks like the feast was successful after all. The king got his answer. Dio, unprovoked, opens his mouth and begins to tell everything. He reveals his true intention was never to cheat, but she was the queen and commanded him. Your Majesty, my king, there was no way I could have told you since you had been in so much pain and grief from the loss of your first wife, Queen Esther. If I had told you of Nyala's demands, although you are a strong man, it may have broken you. The king nods his head, and then looks down, but only for a moment. Nyala mutters, "Humph," under her breath. Dio continues, saying that he never intended to overthrow the king. What do you mean, overthrow me? Are you working with the bandits? Yes and no, my king. The bandits are not real. I hired them for a distraction to keep you from drinking from the golden goblet at the feast. What? What was wrong with the goblet? It was poisoned, my king. Nyala, you tried to poison me? Dio looked at Nyala almost the whole time the king was talking to him, not out of disrespect, but he wanted to keep an eye on her since she had already been violent towards the king. And the king also looked at her, glared through her. She had no guilt and no shame. She glared back with her cold, icy, beautiful, bewitching eyes. Dio thought, she is the kind of woman that I need to be careful of in the future. Dio protested that he never intended to take any jewels, or silver, or gold, or money. Nothing. When he was caught by the gate with all those things, he was only delaying Nyala by pretending the sack was too heavy for him to give time enough for the other guards to get there. And if she did happen to get away, Your Majesty, I would know exactly where to find her. Dio's attraction for Nyala had been real, since she was so beautiful, but her conniving ways turned him off. Dio's loyalty to the crown was stronger. Plus, how could he love someone who cheated on their doting husband? What would she do to him if they ever got together? He confesses everything, asking the king's mercy while exposing the queen's treachery. Overcome with rage and humiliation, Nyala screams at Dio, "You betrayed me! You were supposed to love me!" Dio hands her over to the king, to whom he is loyal. My king, please forgive me. I may have been disloyal with the queen, but I would never be disloyal with the kingdom. I never wanted to take your place. The next day, the king holds a hearing with everyone present. With a thundering decision, the king sentences Nyala to exile. She is stripped of her title and jewels. The king forgives Dio, recognizing his bravery and loyalty, and promotes him to the rank of general. Nyala tries to run out of the court, but she is caught by one of the other guards. Before she is taken away, Nyala spits venomous words. You can have mercy on Dio, but not on me? Me? I'm your wife, me? Nyala? You made me promises. Yes, I made promises and so did you. I kept my promises. Did you? You will regret this, Odum. You'll regret doing this to me. One day, your mercy will be your downfall. King Odum thunders, I will have mercy on whom I will show mercy, but some things are not forgivable, Nyala. I sentence you to exile from this kingdom. Do not show yourself here again. Heading into exile from the kingdom, the guards escort Nyala to the edge of the dark forest. She turns her head as she is about to enter into that tree-filled midnight. She pauses for a moment with rage-soaked tears in her eyes, looking at Mama Okoro's hut. Oh, why did she do that? Why did she go there? Why did she get that poison? Why did she hate the king who loved her so much? Those should have been her questions, but instead, she asked herself, why didn't her plan work? Why didn't Dio love her? Why wasn't he loyal to her and not to that old man? Has Nyala learned her lesson? Or is she still plotting revenge against King Odum and Dio? As she disappears into the night, which seems to be her special talent, King Odum reflects, mercy is the mark of a true ruler, and betrayal only weakens the heart of the betrayer. May she find peace wherever she ends up. The pursuit of selfish desires often leads to one's downfall, while loyalty and integrity will ultimately triumph. In closing, what would you choose? Love or loyalty? Comment below. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel to hear more stories from Africa Untold.